morning. My name is Nicole Naditz. I support teaching and learning with technology. So I support our teachers and others with how to use technology in their classes. I also support the world languages classes in our district. I used to be a French teacher for almost 25 years. Yeah. So I get to support two aspects of teaching and learning that I really love. And for this particular session, we will be looking at artificial intelligence, particularly generative artificial intelligence. And today's program is an introduction. Chances are all of you have used it, but the ways in which we have been using it for many years now operate automatically without us asking. For example, do you use GPS? That is run by artificial intelligence. Do you have Netflix or Amazon? Or when it suggests a movie for you to watch, that is artificial intelligence at work. What changed was in November of 2022, you probably heard on the news things like ChatGPT. And that was different because for the first time, you, me, anybody with internet could actually ask an AI tool to do something for them instead of just having the artificial intelligence automatically doing things in the background, right? That's what changed. Since then, a lot of new artificial intelligence tools have come out that some of you may have used or not. Have any of you tried ChatGPT for anything? You have. Nice. Okay, good. Let's see if this, okay. So I'm going to give an introduction to generative artificial intelligence because there are a lot of things people don't know about how it works that are important so that if you want to use it, you have a better understanding of what kinds of things you can ask it to do and what kinds of things to watch out for in the information it produces. That's important for you, and it's important for your students. Your students are never going to know a life without artificial intelligence. So rather than pretending it doesn't exist, San Juan Unified School District is working really hard and really intentionally to support staff with how to use it responsibly, but also to support them in their work. And we are even looking at some of the incredible potential, the possibilities for offering students support through carefully selected and evaluated artificial intelligence tools. And looking at how do we help teachers understand how to help students realize what they need to know, because some of our students are already using it and they don't know the things I'm about to tell you. And so they don't realize some of the possible challenges and limitations. So we want to be ahead and start supporting teachers so that the teachers can start talking to students and so on. And that you now can go home and share this information with your students. So essentially, AI, artificial intelligence, generative AI is just a computer program. It just has special training, okay? And that training allows it to create new content that didn't exist before. Before generative AI, everything that computer programs did were basically things that it was trained to only produce this thing. It had a very set kind of system of rules and things it could do, right? Now it can actually create new content, text, song lyrics, articles, emails, and so on that never existed before. And it does that, even images, music, video, audio, you can do all of that with generative AI. And so ChatGPT is one you've heard of. For images, you might have heard people talk about DALL-E. or maybe Mid-Journey, and so on. There are a lot of tools out there people are using to create new content by asking it to create things for them. And the way it works is it first gets trained. And it gets trained with a really, really, really large amount of data and files. For example, ChatGPT was given, before it was released to you and to me, it was trained. And the first step in its training was the programmers, the developers, basically said, here's everything publicly available on the internet, web pages, videos that have captions available, blogs, any literature that's been uploaded, magazine websites, everything that is publicly available. Good morning. Everything that is publicly available was given to ChatGPT. Not everybody was asked about if they wanted their stuff given to ChatGPT, which is actually one of the conversations and issues we're having now, right? But it was given to ChatGPT. And ChatGPT then, and this is the same of all the generative AI tools, it uses what's called machine learning algorithms. And algorithms just mean the steps in a process. It sounds like a big fancy word, but all an algorithm is a step-by-step process that computer programs do to complete a task, okay? So they got everything on the web, and then the training continues where the ChatGPT, for example, the programmers told it, okay, find patterns, find connections. For example, one of the training items for ChatGPT was to find connections just between the words, all the words available on the web. Humans also make connections between words when we use language. And we see things like, oh, all of those words are about family. All of these words rhyme, like in a poem. If you know a little grammar, you might say, oh, these are nouns and these are verbs. Those are connections that we make in language. We can do about 15 to 17 different types of connections. Artificial intelligence can find more than 100 types of connections we can't even really conceive of. Have you heard about using AI to translate? One of the reasons it typically works better than Google Translate is because of that training. All of the language the AI received was in context. It was native speaker content, articles, web pages, literature, right? As opposed to Google Translate, which was fed a list of all the words in the language and a list of all the rules for making sentences. And then Google just tries to put it together. No cultural understanding or context behind it. So sometimes the things it produces don't make a lot of sense for the situation. AI typically does better translations because all of the language it received was in context to begin with, and that's how it was trained. The same way a baby eventually learns language in its first language, because everything the baby and then toddler hears is part of conversations that are happening and its context. So that's one of the ways it was trained. And then because of that, it's able to start to create new content, okay, with what it learned. It can produce human-like text. You've probably interacted with an AI chatbot when you've gone onto a website for customer service. A lot of them don't use people at first. They direct you to an artificial intelligence trained chat machine that
doesn't understand what you're asking.
Thank you. that tries to see if it can help without you needing human support. And if it can, great. But a lot of times I end up having to ask it, can you please connect me to a human?
Right.
You are not understanding my need. Right? But did you notice it is trained to use language that feels very similar to how I use language with humans. It will say please and thank you, which, by the way, if you use a chatbot to create something new or for customer service, everything you do is contributing to its training. So if you would like it to continue to be polite, believe it or not, you should actually use please and thank you, and so on. It is actually training with every interaction it has. It is continuing to train. So a lot of ways we use it: writing assistants. People use it to help them write emails, right? People use it to help them write essays, which is something we'll have to talk about with students, right? People use it to help them write stories. My parents are actually semi-professional photographers. My dad is also really good at technology. And there's a lot of conversation happening in the art space around artificial intelligence and art and photo and even writing. Like, is it really your art if you have artificial intelligence create it? And so what my parents do, they do photography, they take the photos. Then they use a variety of tools, including AI tools, to allow the photo to do something that wasn't available naturally, but it's still their photo, right? So getting assistance like that, getting step-by-step instructions. Depending on the task, if there's something you need to do and you don't know how to do it, AI can be really good at giving you the step-by-step instructions. And by the way, if you haven't tried this already, if you speak a language other than English, you can communicate with ChatGPT in your language. And you can also click, I think it has the good morning. I think it has the microphone option. You can speak instead of typing. Image creation, like I said with my parents, language translation, answering questions, providing information, writing drafts for you, and so on. So there are a lot of benefits. So we're going to start with the good. There's a lot of benefits that are possible. And this is just in general. It can help contribute ideas and support your brainstorming. Let's say you're trying to, well, let's start with a fun one. Let's say you show ChatGPT a picture of the things in your refrigerator, and you ask it to tell you what you can make for dinner because you don't know. Oh, that's good. Right? You're like, I'm going to go home and try that now. Right? So, if you don't like what it comes up with the first time, you can just ask it to do it again, and it will not repeat itself. And it won't get angry at you for asking to do it again. It doesn't get impatient. No. Like, it's, if you want it to try again and do it differently, you can just tell it, right? So that's one thing. It saves a lot of time for people in business, and I will say our teachers too, with things they have to do all the time, but that take up a lot of time. And because it can generate ideas, text, like lengthy texts, way faster than humans can, it saves a lot of time, even though the people using it have to look it over and make sure it's okay. Even if it's only 80% right, it saves so much time because now the person only has to correct 20% instead of having to have done all of the work to begin with. It gives them a great start. Quick access to information. Like I said, if you need a step-by-step instructions, it's quick, right? It can help with learning new topics. If you're curious about something, it could be in the sciences, medicine, arts, history. You can ask AI, but you'll see a little bit later, you do have to be very careful about the information you get back, okay? And we'll see later about that. And it helps break down complex ideas. For example, you can give it, let's say you're reading an article and you're interested in it, but you're stuck. Like one paragraph has a lot of stuff in it that you're like, I'm not understanding what this is telling me all the way. You can copy that paragraph, paste it into AI, and ask it to explain it in more simple language. Or ask it to explain it. If you only like soccer, you can see if it can give you an example of this, but using soccer terms to help you make the connection. And sometimes it can and sometimes it can't. So the soccer doesn't work, but there's something else you're interested in, you can always try another example, right? Artificial intelligence tools like ChatGPT are specifically trained not to do certain things. For example, if you try to ask it how to do something that would ultimately be against the law or promote violence, it is trained not to respond to that. Okay. Second of all, your other question, is AI going to replace humans? Essentially, right? Is it going to suddenly, how many of you saw Terminator, the first movie, right? Skynet, right? So I can't tell the future, but it's not that it's going to replace humans. However, because of the incredible capacity of artificial intelligence to do a lot of things that it used to be only humans could do, the role of humans in various workplaces is going to change, because there are still things that only the human in the room can do. But we need to help ourselves and our students understand that, because there are some kinds of work, like customer service work, that's starting to be at least partially done by AI. Does that make sense? So humans need to keep working on the kinds of skills that AI does not possess. For example, even though it's fun and you can ask it to write song lyrics, it isn't actually creative. Remember I talked about its training and how it makes connections between words? When it does that, it just makes a prediction of what you might want based on what you asked for and based on its training. It doesn't actually know what any of those things mean. It's just a computer program putting words together based on its training, right? If we have time after, I'll bring up one of my other presentations and I'll show you a really easy, specific example that makes it easier to show how AI doesn't actually know anything, okay? So we as humans and as schools, we have a responsibility to make sure we develop critical thinking skills, communication skills, collaboration skills, creativity skills, the kinds of things AI does not actually possess, and that the workplaces, businesses, jobs are going to depend on their workers having to do the things that AI cannot do. So I do want to be very transparent that in San Juan Unified School District, we've already provided a tool for teachers that they can use to support them in their work. When we did that, we actually did a pilot of the tool last year. We had a group of teachers of different subjects and grade levels evaluate it. We talked to the vendor to make sure that all the data that is generated and done inside the tool stays inside San Juan Unified. So you remember how I said everything you do trains the AI when you go to ChatGPT? When our teachers go to the tool we purchased, it does not. It doesn't leave our system. So, and we still train them not to provide any student information. Like if you want to have it provide, let's say a teacher has a student who needs additional ideas to support this student who perhaps has what's called a 504 plan, meaning they need some specific additional supports because of some special needs that they have, right? The tool doesn't need to know the kid's name. It doesn't care, right? So we train our teachers, just say, I have a student who, please provide suggestions for this lesson to accommodate that student's needs, right? Because sometimes teachers, they really do want, as someone who taught for 25 years, we really want to support each and every one of our students in our classes. But every once in a while we'll hit a lesson and we know we have a student who has very specific needs that we are required to include and address. And we look at what we're trying to, and we're like, I don't know, I'm out of ideas. I don't know what to do, right? So they can turn to an artificial intelligence tool that is not ChatGPT. It is specially trained for education. So it received multiple levels of training. It received the base training of the content available on the internet, and then an additional layer of training specifically on education in order to support their work. They will use it to, I shouldn't have said create, I'm gonna change this before you get the slides. They use it to draft lesson plans and even materials for lessons. Remember that every single thing artificial intelligence does for you, or for our teachers, or eventually possibly for students, must be considered a draft, meaning not finished. The human must look it over. The human who asked for the stuff needs to check it and make sure, is it in the voice, the style that I like? Is it accurate? Will it meet the needs of the people that I'm going to be giving it to? It can generate practice activities and assessment tasks, meaning it can create, sometimes teachers are teaching a topic and they might have a textbook and they've done all the practice activities in the textbook and they've done all the things in the workbook, and they have students who still need more practice. So then they created more practice activities on their own, and they have students who still need more practice, right? And so they're like, I'm out. I've used everything I've got. So they ask the education-trained AI for more practice activities, more examples, more tasks. Because remember what I said, the AI never gets tired of providing more. You want 5 more? Great. You want 20? Want 100? It will not get tired. It can provide content that is responsive to students' needs. Like I said, when I gave that example of students who have particular needs, they can ask the specially trained artificial intelligence tool to create a new practice activity that, for example, is written at a specific grade level, or that is translated into another language even, or that provides an example related to video games, because I know that the only thing that this student over here will listen to is if I talk about video games, right? And so on. So I gave a few examples. It can, if a text is written at 9th grade level, but they have a student who really is just reading at 6th grade level, they can give the text to the tool and it will rewrite it at 6th grade level for them. Explaining like in video game language, they can ask it to draft personalized feedback. What that means is students do an activity. In the past, teachers try to read all of the responses that students write for every activity that students do, and it gets hard. I taught high school. I had 150 students in 4 different classes, and we need to give feedback promptly, really soon. And it needs to be feedback that tells the learner what they did well, where they struggled, and what their next steps are. So if you were a teacher, imagine doing that for every student, every activity. We fall behind, right? I'm going to be very honest. It's hard to do that to the degree we should. So artificial intelligence without the name of the student can help draft it. We don't give it directly to the student from the artificial intelligence because we know that we need to look it over. There are some new artificial intelligence tools that do provide feedback right away. So in those cases, we give a lot of test cases to it to make sure we like what it does and how it's understanding the student's work and what kind of feedback it's giving. But we don't use that for tests or for grades. That's for practice things. We don't let it do any automatic things for something that's going to be graded. If they want help with feedback on something that's going to need a grade, they can put the student's work in, let it draft some feedback, look that over themselves as the teacher, make sure it makes sense, make sure it will work for the student, make sure it represents the student's needs and the teacher's goals, edit it, make it better, then give that to the students. And the AI does not determine grades. The teacher is solely responsible for deciding the grade your students receive. Does that make sense?
It's like a math assignment where the questions either right or wrong.
Right. So, and we've had tools, I'm glad you brought that up. She said, oh, like a math assignment where the questions are either right or wrong. Now, those have been easy for a while because there have been tools for a long time before artificial intelligence, kind of like Scantrons. Yeah, it's a very simple computer program. If there's just a right versus a wrong answer, right, then there are tools that have for a long time been able to automatically do that because it's such a simple program to do. But this goes a little bit further to actually analyze how, especially more open-ended responses, analyze the student's language in relation to the question. The teachers can even tell it the standard. So all classes are guided by what are called standards. The things that we as teachers are trying to teach our students over the course of the year that they're with us. And there's a list. So for English, 6th grade, there are standards. For math, there are standards. For French, well, all world languages, there are standards. Even PE has standards, right? And so we can tell the AI tool, please look at this student's work, compare it to this standard, and provide some feedback on what the student did well, where the student may not quite have met the standard, and what next steps you would propose. And to make it even better, I try to train teachers to ask the AI tool to explain why they said that so that I can tell if it's pulling the right information. Translating again, drafting, oh, I said feedback already. Sorry, said that twice. So, would you like to see a demo of a tool that that teachers are using? Yes. You want to see how it works? Okay, so I'm going to give you a demo. The tool is called Magic School. We selected it very carefully because at the time that we were looking at purchasing, it was the only tool that met all of our requirements. Number one, student data privacy, even though kids weren't going to be on it, we wanted it in place anyway. Meaning it cannot take or sell or share students' data. We wanted it to only keep the teacher's work within San Juan Unified School District and not use it to train the tool and share out to other districts and anything like that. So we had to only allow a tool that did that. And we wanted it to be accurate, easy to use, and with a lot of features that our educators needed support with that they could do really quickly. And what we found was at the time, especially last spring, when we were purchasing and looking and piloting it, was this tool called Magic School has 2 pieces to it that made it really helpful for teachers. So I'm going to go over here. So I am signed into Magic School.
Are there that many different AI?
There really are. Artificial intelligence is growing so fast that there's new tools almost every day, and they're all trying to get school districts to buy them all, and we're like, yeah, okay.
Is that something you buy once? Like
Yearly, yeah. And of course, you can imagine, there was not a line item in the budget for artificial intelligence,
I can imagine.
right? And it's also very expensive. Even the tools, there are tools I want to buy for the district, and I can't because we can't afford to buy all the things. Right. It's just too expensive, and our district is really large. So, but what I want you to see here is 2 things. There's a section here that I'm going to scroll down. There's more than 70 specific tasks where teachers don't even have to be good at asking AI because it's prepared to ask the questions it needs to do the work. Remember what I said? I want it easy to use, right? Then, for those who need it or want it, it has an open-ended chatbot like ChatGPT. It's not ChatGPT, but it is open-ended. And if there's not something here that works, they can go straight to here and just ask for what they want. But in that case, they do need to know how to do a special new skill that your students need also called prompting. They need to know how to ask the AI for things so that the AI can respond well. It's a new skill that we didn't need before.
And that's a challenge.
It is, and that's a big part of my work, is training staff on what a good prompt includes. Once they know, it's good. It's actually really easy once they know. But sometimes teachers said, oh, I wanted to use, like way back in the day when it was just ChatGPT, for example. Like, yeah, I tried it. I didn't like what it produced. It took me so long to try to get it to do it right that it was faster to just do it myself. And that happens when people don't know how to ask the AI for what they want. They don't know what kind of information needs to be provided, right? So this tool, I'm going to show you a template first, and I'm going to show you one that teachers like a lot. Lesson plan, okay? It will, you tell it the grade level. If there's a standard or just the topic, you can just say the topic, cell biology, you know, whatever it is you want to call it. Any additional criteria, tell them about the students, what, obviously, what grade are they in? What kinds of things do they like and understand well? Because the AI can try to make connections for you. Are there students who need additional support, and in what way? Because that way it will try to create a lesson that meets those needs, right? And then you can even specifically say what standards you want to align it to. So in this case, I'm just gonna, instead of typing all the things, because that'll take a while, I'm gonna hit exemplar. Watch how fast this works. So it's gonna do a 6th grade lesson about animals in their environments and how the relationships between the animals, the plants, and so on, okay? So I'm just gonna hit generate. And when you go down, it will give, it will, see it's still, look how fast it's producing. It's still typing, that's how fast it is, okay? So it will tell me what the objective is, which I can edit. Remember, it's just a draft, right? But look how fast that was to draft compared to when I would draft my lessons before. And in good lesson design, you tell the students what the goal is in language they can understand, and immediately you design the assessment. That way, you'll be able to plan to ensure that everything you do during the lesson points directly to how they will need to show that they know and understand the material, right? So this actually models good lesson design by stating the objective, then the assessment. It even says, here are some key points that are going to be in this lesson. Here's how we suggest you open. Here's how let me make this bigger. Here we go. Here's how you might introduce the new material. Here's some guided practice opportunities. Here are some ways students can practice on their own. Here's a closing. Here's an extension for after the lesson's over if you want to do more. Here's some homework ideas. And here are the specific standards. NGSS means science, next generation science standards. So it can generate that fast. Whereas if I wanted to, I can instead just type something here, right, and ask it to produce.
All staff, teachers and staff already have.
They already have this. They already have access to this.
How long have we had it?
We've had it the whole school year. We are a large district. Communication is sometimes a challenge in a large school district, so I still have people who don't know they have it, no matter how many ways I try to get the message out. And I've done several trainings, but I know and I'm being asked to come to a lot of sites now to train their staff, which is great. But we have 64 sites, so it could, going that route, it could take a while to get everybody.
So I'm an educator,
Yeah.
I'm a science teacher. I do know about this tool, but I don't know how to write a correct prompt in order to get what you just showed me. It was great. So
using the tools is a great place to start instead of Raina. Because Raina is the open-ended one. And by the way, email me later and I'll help you with the prompting. But here, this is what, if you use the tools, that's where it asked me the questions so that it gets the information it needs, right? So if I want to go back down to my lesson plan, since I don't know how to write a good prompt yet, it asks me, what grade is it for? Tell me what the topic is, right? It asks me everything it needs, and then it can go from there. Here's the other thing it can do. Let's say you ask it to create a practice activity. When it's done creating, it has a button called Actions, meaning I can then tell it immediately. Now, that's great. I'll give that to some students. Can you please translate it in Spanish? I'll give that to my Spanish. Can you please translate it into Arabic? How about Pashto? How about da-da? We actually specifically asked that all the languages our students speak be included. I did find out, interestingly, when it comes to Farsi Dari, at least as of a few months ago, it was more accurate with Dari, which surprised me, but it was more accurate with Dari than it was with Farsi. But we try to keep up with that and let our teachers know where it's strong. We can also ask it to do some other things, or we can just send a follow-up and say, thank you, now, blah, 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 blah. For example, it said, do a practice activity with blah, 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 with whatever. You can follow up with a message and say, thank you, please create the questions for that practice activity that you included in the lesson that you mentioned, and it will actually do it. Yeah, so these tools help our teachers and our students a lot. It helps our teachers, but in helping our teachers, it also provides help for students because the teachers can use this to provide the supports that the students need. The students are not in this tool. We are piloting student tools, and the student version of Magic School is one of the ones we are piloting, where students are actually getting a chance to ask for the help they need when they need it, and for teachers to create experiences for students within that safe environment for students to engage and practice with. So that's piloting right now, and that pilot will end probably in late January. Several schools, different grade levels, different subjects on purpose so that we get a wide range of data. Yeah. Yes, please. What is your question?
This tool is really like a 100% positive for all teachers level. Because I believe like this, yes, I used to be a teacher in my country.
Yeah.
And then use the old school, you have to prepare your
Oh, yeah.
and you use your
Yes, yes.
But like now, I am sorry, not 100% teachers. They
No,
are
of course
not
not.
teachers. Some of them, they are lazy. Now, if they don't use this tool, it means they don't have anything to
So-
provide students. Like in this case, because it's like kind of addiction.
Yes and no. So remember what I said earlier. Everything it produces is a draft, and the teacher still has to decide, even to start, what's the topic? What do my students need? The teachers still provide all of that. The teachers still have to review it. Often the teachers still have to generate the way the lesson will look for their students. Do you know what I mean? Whether they're going to use, like I'm using a slideshow. They still have to generate those things. It just gives them a start on the outline of the way in which they might want to do the information, which they still have to decide if that's going to work for their students or not.
They are just sitting there and then.
And I will say we know that, I mean, humans are humans everywhere. There are some for which that is true. The vast majority are not doing that, but there are some that we're actually trying to help. I actually had a teacher just a couple days ago, or last couple weeks ago, I convinced her to come to the AI training because she was afraid of AI. And we have that too. She left saying, oh my gosh, I understand it better. I know what it does well, what it doesn't do well, and how much it can help me, and it's saving, right? So there's also fear. So there's a couple of reasons that people may or may not use this, but one of them is, yes, to save time or get something done that they didn't feel like they had time to do for whatever reason, right? One is understanding that there is also fear because it's a new technology and it seems like it can do so much. And then people start thinking about the Terminator movie, right? So there's that too.
Well, some people don't like change. They like what they're used to. And that's the biggest thing, is coming out of your comfort zone.
It is.
Because one thing I found about change, even though I may be nervous, once I did it, it's like, oh, why was I so worried, you know? And that's the thing, but.
And supporting change, there's an approach to helping support change like this that we're trying to model in our district as well.
But what you were saying about doing things on student level, because, and I'm gonna go back to when I did some college, there was a teacher who, and I can't believe she did this. every time she would go through the book, because we gotta understand, books are written by authors, not teachers.
Exactly.
A lot of times people fail because of the way
Yeah.
the book is set. And she would go through the book when we would get in class, we get a new book come out, she would go through the whole thing before class start and do her addendums.
Yeah.
Because, like for example, one of my computer classes, the results were not the same because again, it was written by a writer and not a teacher. And so students would fail at something. The problem is you gotta get teachers to realize that those books are not written by teachers. And that's where the disconnect is, why a lot of people fail.
And that the book is not the teacher. This is something I still work on with my teachers, right? The book was never supposed to be the teacher.
And there are some people who take the book as gospel, okay?
Right.
And
like
that's-
we're
that's
supposed
the
to
problem
finish
I had
it.
with one of my teachers this past semester is that, okay, I come from a background where this is not correct, you know? For example, principal, she was using principal in the wrong context. I'm like, PAL is your pal, that's a person. PLE is like a guideline.
Yes.
And she's like, well, I'll have to see this. She's like failing us on something because the terminology was incorrect.
And that's hard, right? And it can be hard also as families to understand, like you're doing. It's really like to not just stay quiet, but it's okay to write or contact teachers and professionally ask. By the way, actually, one thing you as families can do, have you ever tried to email a teacher for your student? Sometimes it's hard to know what to say.
Exactly.
Sometimes you might even be angry. You want to email a teacher because you're angry about something. And you realize you don't want to be angry in your email.
Don't get hurt.
Right? AI can help you write the email. You can actually tell it, I am the parent of a 5th grade student. This incident happened. I want to tell the teacher, and then you just list. You don't even have to do complete sentences. Boom, 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 boom. Whatever the three things you want to tell the teacher and a question you want to ask, right? Please write the email in a professional and courteous tone, right? You can also ask it in your language and then ask it to translate it, right? So that if you need to, you can look at the email first and see if you like what it said in your language. And generally speaking, the translation will be very good. So if you need that support, you can have it in your language first, and then you can follow up and just say, translate in English, right? And it can do that. Translate your email in English. So we only use AI tools that are safe for students, even if it's also just for staff. We don't allow any AI that we use in the district, even if it's a simple tool that has AI running in the background to like check students' answers and give feedback, it has to be in a closed system where nothing goes outside of San Juan Unified. We check them for safety, for security, for working in the within our technology network, because we have some blocks on things, so we want to make sure it's going to work. Also, by the way, I have a tip for you as families. Some of your students may be experimenting with AI. They should not be on ChatGPT. They should not be on ChatGPT. It is collecting and selling their data. It is not trained for education. So the answers it provides are more likely to be incorrect or even reflect some really bad biases, as she was talking about. It is not corrected for that. And so there can be a lot of misinformation and bias, more so than in education tools. So if you know your students want to use artificial intelligence tools, I would recommend that you always make sure they are signed into Chrome browser on their Chromebook with their San Juan email, which will only allow them access to tools they're supposed to have access to, and it will not allow them access to ChatGPT. Now, I will say right now, they're going to be disappointed because unless they are in the pilot for the 2 student tools, that means they have access to none. But right now, that would be safer than going to ChatGPT. As adults, You can agree to the terms of service. You know that they might take your stuff and redo it to give to other people. If I do use it, but I use it knowing that it might do that. And I choose which tool I'm using for the purpose. If it's for education, I don't use ChatGPT. If it's for some other stuff, I might go to ChatGPT, but I know that they collect data. I know that what it creates for me might get reused for some other person's response in certain ways, and so on. Your students don't know that.
So if ChatGPT does that, what alternative that we have if we're using it?
So I will say that you'll have to check, each time you have to check the terms of service. Sorry. There are some additional tools out there that at least have another layer of training. For example, Claude, AI, CLAUDE, has an additional layer of training where it was given the United Nations Charter for Human Rights. And CLAUDE AI. Probably .ai, but I can't remember if it's a dot but it's Claude AI is what it's called. It was actually developed by people who left OpenAI, which is what created ChatGPT. And they gave it the United Nations Charter for Human Rights and said that every answer you give, you need to first check it through that. That does not mean it completely eliminated bias, but it took an extra layer. It also, I can't guarantee that it doesn't collect data. The hard part is usually you can't guarantee that unless you use a paid model. So for free tools, almost any free tool on the internet, it's collecting your data. If it's free, it just is. Right, your Gmail account is, unfortunately. But you can look for tools with better training at least. Does that make sense? And additional training. And again, as I said earlier, when we talk about using AI, we are training teachers that they review the material first before they give it out to anybody, whether it's an email that they're sending, a lesson for students, and so on, if that makes sense, right? Please still work. Okay, well, that part's broken. So what if your students are using tools? Let's say they don't use their San Juan email. They've created personal Gmail accounts, right? Not all tools are safe for students. Specifically, I can tell you ChatGPT is not. It has a lot of, someone mentioned earlier, the misinformation, disinformation, people who use it and keep feeding into it. But remember, it's trained on everything that's fed into it. So when people ask for and generate content that reflects disinformation or misinformation, that just becomes part of the data for ChatGPT, right? It doesn't know right from wrong. So it just becomes part of the data. Some of the responses may include inappropriate content because it was never designed for children or students. In fact, originally, ChatGPT, you're not going to like this at all. Originally, it started on what's called the dark web. It's not a good place for tools to start, I'm just going to say, right? Some tools require accounts with personal details, which means they might collect and share personal information. The data might be used for advertising, and you won't have any control over what advertisements your child sees, right? It can sometimes, as I said, give wrong or biased information or even disinformation and misinformation. And it may store the conversations it has with your student, and it may store whatever is created and share that out, as opposed to kind of keeping it private. I will give you a link, by the way, to the slides. You'll have everything. So we started to talk about this earlier. 5 minutes. AI can make mistakes because it doesn't actually know anything. You have to remember that artificial intelligence is not actually intelligent. You are intelligent. You have to verify what it creates. It does not know. It may not always understand the context or the nuance. So it might produce something that looks like good English, but isn't the right tone for the thing that you want to do. You have to change that. It can be biased. So, for example, remember I told you that the base model for AI, generative AI, is trained by feeding everything available on the web. Well, guess what? Everything available on the web does not represent all of the knowledge by cultures all around the world. It does not represent all the stories, all the genius, all the experiences, good and bad, that have happened to populations around the world, because not all of that is equally represented on the internet. When you look at where in the world people have consistent access to internet, you will see that it is largely North America, including Canada, Western Europe. Everywhere else is much more spotty, if there's access at all. Where are those people's stories? Where are those people's experiences? And then when you look at what was uploaded, historically throughout time, okay, it was fed all the literature. Great. Statistically, if you look at centuries of literature, that's a lot of white men. It just is. And that's what was fed. It doesn't have, it is getting literature that was written later, but when you look at the vast amount of literature that is available on the web and break it down by gender and race and ethnicity and background and language even, it starts with, in English, by white men as the biggest group. And it's fed that, and that means those are the perspectives that it has when it responds. When you look at classrooms, so when you ask it to make a picture of a classroom, this is actually really funny. When you ask it to make a picture of a classroom, it looks at all the historical images that are on the internet about classroom, which means all the desks are in rows, which is actually not how it is all the time anymore. There is a chalkboard. Why? Because picture after picture after picture after picture after picture for generations and centuries was chalkboards. It wasn't until recently that whiteboards were the thing, and forget displays. That's really new. There's hardly any image data for the artificial intelligence to use. So it generates data based on the majority of data that it got, right? So they can use content. Also, I said this earlier, because it was given everything on the web, it didn't ask if it had permission to use all that stuff. So it can generate content based on things that were copyright protected. And if your students try to create something creative with the help of AI, they also have rights as creators. Everybody does. If they create something new, even if AI helped, if they create something new, they have rights, but their rights might be being taken away by the AI when it gets just shared back out to everybody.
Or someone else may take it.
So your students, are creators. They're on TikTok, they're on YouTube creating things. All of that goes into the AI. So your students need to know it might not be giving them their rights. Students may over-rely. They might try to use it to do the work for them. By the way, for the student pilot, where we're evaluating student tools, that's the other thing it had to do, not do the work for the students. When the students try to ask it, write an essay for me, it says no. And it says, you can share your draft with me and I will give you questions to consider, but I will not write the essay for you. I know, right? But if they go to if they go to ChatGPT, guess what ChatGPT will do? It will write the essay for them. No. That's not what we want. Okay. There are concerns about job displacement. Someone was asking about the jobs. There are concerns about that because humans have to learn new skills now so that they are able to do the work that AI can't do. It can create misleading information. We have to be ethical and responsible in our use of artificial intelligence, and so do our students. We are down to the end, but I am going to show you what else you have here. How you can protect your child online, which my digital citizenship presentation next has a little bit of this too. So I have some tools for you, some ideas for you here. Also, some ways that you can support your child around AI specifically. Some guidelines for safe AI use, helping your students know how to be safe online, what you can tell them. And finally, hold on, I'll come back to that. Some tools you can do with your students. I wish I had time to demo them. This is the most complex one, but essentially they can start to see how AI is trained by playing these safe games. And this one does not use their information. They don't have to sign in. So they can actually train a machine, which is what AI is trained on, machine learning, to sort things. So come back to this page for me. This is the slide deck. You can either write down this link, be careful with spelling, it matters, or you can scan the code and you'll have it on your phone, and then you need to email it to yourself though, because if you don't keep that tab open, you're going to lose it. So if you, email it to yourself. Or write down the link, bit.ly/A, capital I, number 4, lowercase FAM. The spelling is very important. If you spell wrong, it will not go there. Okay? You can take a picture of that though and get it later. Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate your time. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day at the conference.